All right, how's it going, y'all? So today I'm very excited because Synology has finally unveiled the active backup for macOS for their active backup for business packages. This really completes pretty much every single personal or office computer that active backup can now back up. It can back up Linux boxes, Windows machines, Windows servers, virtual machines, other Synology NASs, and now finally macOS devices. It finally came out and it's still not completely done, but it is something that I've been waiting on for a very long time because active backup for Windows has been unbelievable. Especially in large offices where you've got 10, 15 computers you really want to be able to back up. The deduplication across all the different computers and the compression has been a lifesaver. You can get insane compression ratios with this because for most users, you probably have the majority of kind of the exact same files across a lot of different computers. And so what Active Backup for Business does is it finds that and goes, oh, hey, we've already seen that, and does not double the space on disk. Instead, it just references the other one. And this is a huge storage saving, which is awesome. The other thing that's very nice about it for Windows is it supports both file level and bare metal restore. Currently, the version of macOS only supports file level restore, not yet bare metal restore, though they are working on that. It's a lot more complex than with a Windows machine, I believe, because, well, Apple has their own security chips and everything and likes total and complete control over everything. And so they are working on that, I believe. No idea when that will come out, but at least now you do have the ability for the file level restore. And I also do not know if the current file level backups that you're making today, if in a year or who knows how long it'll be before they actually get the actual bare metal restore capability, if you'll be able to use previous backups that were just file level to then, once the bare metal is there, be able to use it for bare metal, I'm not sure. So what bare metal is bare metal essentially allows you to rip your hard drive out, throw it out the window, get a new computer, whatever, and then reinstall the entire operating system exactly how it was from the previous copy. So that way you don't have to reinstall any programs. You do not have to do anything because it will be like nothing changed. The only thing that will change in some, especially Adobe licenses, may go, hey, we see you change the serial number of your hard drive. What's up? What's going on? And so that may be a case for you. But other than that, pretty much everything will just go, all right, you're fine. And it will just continue on working. All right, so the other thing I'm going to do is compare this tool to Apple's version of it, which is Time Machine. So Time Machine has been out since 2007, and in all honesty, has not changed much. Mind-blowingly powerful back then, but in a modern era, it does have some flaws and it can be kind of slow. So for one, seeing previous versions of files takes a very long time, especially if you're over a network and using the NAS as a Time Machine backup. It can take a while because it's a sparse bundle, which means it's got to reference all these different things. And since it's just file level, it doesn't have really a good database that actually allows you to recreate the backup super easily. And so sometimes you click to restore a file and it just hangs and it hangs and it hangs until it finds it. But then after that, it's somewhat quick to navigate through. But it does support both file level and also bare metal restores. It also has the ability to choose files that do not get backed up and files that do get backed up, which is nice. One thing it does not do, which I do wish Time Machine would do a better job of, is allow you to choose your versioning. Time Machine just goes, we're going to use 100% of disk, and once we run out of space, we're going to start deleting versions. You really do not have any control over that. And so there's a few things like that that I wish they would do a better job of, but it's pretty much been the exact same feature since 2007, give or take a couple quality of life things. Now we've got Synology's Active Backup for Business. Synology's Active Backup for Business allows you to see your files so much quicker. It loads instantly in the web portal versus with Time Machine, you have to connect a Mac to the Time Machine to actually see it. So if your Mac dies and you just need to grab one file, you can't really do that without hooking up another Mac to it. The other thing that Time Machine does not do is work over a remote connection. So even if you're tunneled in over a VPN, Time Machine is so slow over a high latency connection that it's essentially entirely unusable. Active Backup for Business is designed with SSL encryption, and it's really designed where you can back it up over the internet and have high latency connections, and it just works. The other huge advantage is global deduplication between different computers. So having active backup for business, especially if you have a lot of machines, makes it very easy to save a ton of space. Now, there are 3 places where I do think Time Machine is still winning. For one, ease of setup. Because of the constraints on macOS systems, you have to give a lot of permissions to Synology, and it does take a little bit longer to set up. But for deploying a bunch of Office computers, it's probably faster to do active backup for macOS than Time Machine, just because you can send it all to the same folder and have templating and things like that. Versus with Time Machine, you basically have to create a different shared folder for every single person, and it is clunky like that. Then the second is security-wise. You do give a lot of permissions to Synology when you are creating this backup task for Synology Active Backup for Business. I'm not a security reacher. I have not analyzed their code. I do not know every single thing. I don't know if there's a vulnerability, but you are giving a lot of access to Synology. And so you do open yourself up to a theoretical virus there. It's very unlikely, but something could happen around the lines of, oh, hey, you accidentally download a update from Active Backup for Business for macOS that's actually got a virus in it. They would have a lot of control over your computer, and you've got to give up a lot of that, where Apple's actually spending a lot of time keeping people from accessing these parts of the partition. Just one thing I want to mention there, it requires a lot of access, and you actually have to go into the macOS version of BIOS and actually give you the ability to have non-Apple programs access the entire security chip and everything inside of that. And then finally, bare metal restore. As of today, active backup for macOS does not yet support bare metal restore. Now that being said, it's kind of up to you. I think if you've got a single machine and you really just want to have kind of a disaster recovery, Time Machine may make more sense. But especially once you get adding a lot of computers and you've got offices and things like that, active backup is going to be a very nice feature to have, and it is license free with the Synology. All right, so now that we've gone over that, the last thing that the requirements are is you've got to be updated to the latest version of Active Backup for Business, and you have to be on at least macOS Catalina to do this. All right, so now let's go ahead and set it up. So I've logged into my Synology NAS, and all we need to go and do is go into the Package Center and download Active Backup for Business. If you've already done this, you can skip this process, but this is going to entail that your Synology has to be able to reach the internet. If not, there is a Synology article about how to allow Active Backup for Business without authenticating on the internet. The reason for this is they want to make sure people building Xpology boxes and things like that can't use these really nice features. And so they require you to have an internet connection, say, yes, you can. So you just have to sign in here and say this activate and just agree the terms of service without reading them. I'm sure you're going to do that. And that's all there is to it. I think you have to sign in for an account. Don't quite remember. I'm already signed in. And so that's why. If you do, obviously sign in. And now if you go into the personal computer section, we can see, woohoo, we've got a macOS one right here. So now we're going to go ahead and just hit add device. And we've got a few options here that we're going to be using. So this is a really nice quality of life feature that they've done, is you can use a specific certificate rather than the main certificate. So we're going to hit OK on that. And I'm going to get back to that in a second here. But first, we're going to hit download the installer. And so while that's talking, I did want to add this new feature that they've got is if you go into settings and scroll down to certificate, you have the ability to have a dedicated Active Backup for Business certificate. This is a certificate that is self-signed, but is valid for 10 years, rather than your general one, which is only valid for 1 year, I believe, for the self-signed one. And so the really nice thing about this is you don't have to recreate all your connections if the certificate changes, because this certificate lasts for 10 years. And so if you're using a self-signed certificate because you don't have this accessible on the internet, and therefore you don't have a Let's Encrypt certificate, you can instead just use the self-signed one, which I would recommend most people do. And you only have to validate it the very first time or in another 10 years. So that is a really nice thing to have, and it's a great quality of life improvement here. Though if you want to use a specific certificate that you've actually got from Let's Encrypt or whatever, you can disable it and use your own one. But for the vast majority of users, unless you've got your entire certificate authority and everything's trusted already, use this guy right here, because you just have to authenticate and say, yes, I know that's a self-signed certificate. I'm setting this up on a local network. I'm not worried about a man-in-the-middle attack the very first time. And then you are good from there. All right, so now with that, I'm just going to go into my downloads and open up this guy right here and install it. All right, so now we've installed it. And so now there's the important part where we have to start giving a lot of permission that macOS holds tight to Active Backup for Business, because, well, it needs literally access to every single file on the NAS. So we're going to configure the secure access token. And this is one piece where you've got to type in your macOS password into Active Backup for Business, which means theoretically, by doing this, if you had a virus, it could kind of take over your entire machine and do whatever it wanted to, which is one thing I understand that's probably the only way to do it because Apple is so tight on the security, but you do have to type it in here. All right, and so now it's popped up here because I've already gone through and done some of these steps, I believe. They're kind of out of order, where you've got to give Active Backup for Business additional permissions. And so you actually, if you've got a M1 Mac, basically any of the Apple Silicon Macs, you're going to have to go into recovery mode and actually give extra permission to them. And I went through and already recorded this because, well, it's very janky to record from a laptop, especially in your BIOS settings, essentially. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that up. So now I'm just going to replay the clip that I recorded here, talking through it all. The first time you're setting this up, I apologize. This was the only way I could really get it done. Is you need to go in and you need to allow access. And so you basically go into security, system preferences, security and privacy, and wherever they move this on the new macOS, you got to find it. And under privacy right here, you need to give full disk access to Active Backup for Business agent right here. So there is me doing it. The next thing that is the most difficult part is allowing this kernel extension. So this kernel extension is what you actually have to go into recovery mode to do. And that is why I had to record this with a different recorder and cannot do this live, is because I use QuickTime screen recording, which you have to be logged in and have the system running to do. And so I actually had to use an HDMI recorder to get this. If you follow the QR code right here, it's pretty straightforward, but I'll walk you through it here. So you're going to essentially shut down, and then once you boot up, you hold the power button until it boots into recovery mode. All right. So essentially, once you boot down and then you're holding the power button, you'll see booting into recovery mode. And unfortunately, that screen had a HDMI flicker, so I was unable to record it. I did my best to record all this, but you will be brought to this screen right here, which has an options right there. And this is the quote unquote recovery mode. So you're going to select options, hit continue. It's going to boot into the recovery mode. Then you're going to have to sign in with the administrator account, basically whoever's got full access to this machine, just right here. So you just hit next, and then you type in the password. Then from here, you'll look up in the upper left-hand corner over here, and you will go into that utilities, startup security utility. Then you're going to essentially unlock the encrypted disk. And you can see that it's actually created this underscore Synology ABB user. And so you're going to select your actual user that you know the password to, which for me is Will Yarborough. Type it in there and then hit unlock. Then once it's unlocked, you can set the security policy. What you're able to do then is you say reduced security, and you're allowing management of kernel extensions from identified developers. The good news with this is it is at least using the authenticated developer code. So essentially macOS is signing these developers' codes. So you don't have to worry about like some just random guy writing a code. macOS will have at least had to review this code because they're an identified developer and it is signed. So that is better. And that's all you need to add access to. Hit OK. Type in your password again, and then just go ahead and restart your computer. And that's all you need to do. I apologize, this is the only way I could record it, but it unfortunately is what it is. So that was the process we had to do. So now once you boot up, you just reopen Active Backup for Business, should be up here, and we're going to be able to set our server information. For most users, this will be the IP address of the Synology. I'm just going to use the local one and type in the username and password that you'd like to use. So this is where it's going to say, hey, it is a self-signed certificate. We know that, and so we can trust it. And so now it's going to go ahead and set everything up by default. So we're just going to hit OK. And so now when we go into Active Backup for Business back on the Synology, we can see our computer right here. Though we will notice one thing that I don't love, and that is if you look right here, the destination encryption and compression are disabled. So we're actually going to want to delete the default created task. So that process essentially auto-created the task, which automatically set the Active Backup for Business folder to unencrypted. Really, really annoying that is the default. So it creates the task, which automatically disables encryption on Active Backup for Business. So instead, what we need to do is we delete the task. Now we're going to go in and delete the storage. And now we are going to create a new task that we are going to be able to use encryption on. So we're going to go back into task list under personal computer, macOS task, select it. And then this is where you can choose your basic stuff. I'm going to back up the entire thing, including external hard drives, up to you, whatever you want to do there. And then we'll encrypt and compress across the network. And so now that I've deleted that, we can now use Active Backup for Business with encryption and compression. It is just a weird ism of it. I'd recommend doing this. If you've already set this up and you've already got a volume for encryption and compression, you can just use that. But this is how I've started doing it, and it is annoying that you have to. So now you just enable both compression and encryption, add in an encryption key. And we can also use the Synology NAS system partition, which is essentially where we're going to store the key. If you lose this key, all of your backups are useless. And now we can create the schedule. So I'm going to do this daily at 3 a.m. You can run it every hour, kind of whatever you'd like to do. And now you set up a retention policy. There's a ton of stuff here. I'm going to do a full video on Active Backup for Business across everything now, but it's just like any other retention policy. I'm just going to do 10 versions. And so now we've got both encryption and compression, which is very important, especially the encryption part. And it's going to download the encryption key. If you lose this encryption key, your data is kind of useless. And so now it's going to go ahead and back up, and it backs up very fast. It was backing up at 200 megabytes per second over a 10 gig connection, which is pretty good. So I was very impressed by that speed overall. So it's definitely fast. Now I did want to add some tidbits that I did find. So if you are using a Synology Drive automatic share sync folder, it will automatically download and back up any files in there that are downloaded to the actual machine. Anything that is cloud synced, where it's essentially got that cloud icon, it's not actually going to back up. It's just going to back up the folders, but not the files themselves. So that is one thing I do wish they would add, where you had the ability to filter out those folders because they're already on the NAS. The other thing I will say is Time Machine does the exact same thing, so they are at least on par on that. But I do think it would be nice for the ability to have a little bit more control over exactly what was and what was not backed up. It is very much designed for bare metal restores. So it is designed to back up everything under the sun versus some other options where you kind of get to choose what you like. But there's no easy way to say, okay, actually don't back up this folder. Instead, you kind of have to go into the customized policies over here. You don't even get the ability to skip certain folders. So that would be nice, especially if it's Synology Drive. It already knows exactly what you're using. So that could be very useful. It's like, hey, I already know the Synology Drive data is on my machine. It's already on the NAS. Why am I copying it over again? I will also say this 41% I have found to be a little bit of a lie. It's a 400 gig, 300 gig backup, I think it said, and we're going at 60 megabytes per second over Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's not at 41%. It kind of skips forward and does that. Oh, hey, I've done 3/4 of the volumes. Let's say we're at 75%, even though last volume might be 85% of the data. Things like that. The percentages are not exactly truthful, but at least you do get the good overview. And you can see even over Wi-Fi, it's screaming fast, which is awesome. Then file level restore works very well. You can either download them, anything like that. I'm gonna go into my Synology over here and show kind of what the restore policy looks like. So we don't have to wait for an entire backup to go. So you just go into the Active Backup for Business Restore portal. And you can see right here, we've got the data and the Macintosh HD folders. And so you can go through and find your specific files. macOS does have a weird way where Macintosh HD is not really all of your data. Instead, it's now kind of in data. That's part of their protection stuff. But we should be able to go in and essentially find everything. So boom, we can find the downloads folder, we can find the documents folder. And so essentially we've got everything right here and it works really well. You're able to do so much stuff in here and you're just able to click on a file and hit download or restore. And so that is a really great feature. You can also set access permissions on who's allowed to recover what files. And so it's awesome. All right, well, I'd say that's pretty much everything you need to know about this. Go and leave any other questions or tutorials you'd like to see me make about Synology or Active Backup for Business in the comments below, and have a good one. Bye. By the way, you can hire me for consulting. I do that professionally now. I'm quitting my job and doing it full time. Link for that in the description below. All right, now actually bye.